Great to see you, Arlen. How you doing this Monday?
I'm doing pretty good, but I'm a little bit worried. I mean, there's a lot going on in Washington, and I don't know if anybody has control over it, but apparently Trump wants to take all the control, he and Musk. And I think there's a coup going on right now.
Well, that's the question we ask. Is the billionaire takeover complete? I think you would agree that there has been for decades now an ongoing movement by the richest and most powerful people in America to take complete control. So that's the question I have. Is the billionaire takeover complete rather than is the Trump coup done and over with? And I guess your view is this is more specific to Trump, or is that not the case? Do you agree with me that this is a long-standing dynamic that we've been seeing?
I understand. I think that both things are happening at the same time. I think the billionaires are trying, have taken over pretty much the government and, a lot of what's going on. And they're taking all the money, and I think Trump is with them. So, especially Elon Musk. I mean, he's got a lot of power. He's got a lot of money, and he scares me.
All right, well, we'll get into all of that, including the Tom Hartman piece that Arlen features prominently at thebigpicturereport.com. You can see he is the thought leader, and on your screen you see thebigpicturereport.com, where you can find more Arlen. Always, we urge you, please click subscribe. I'll put the little, my GIFs and everything up there. Well, we'll get to that in a little bit. Arlen, before Trump became president in the second iteration, I had been focused very, very much, primarily to start every program on the situation in Gaza, Israel's ongoing pogrom there, part of their genocidal actions, and I certainly use the strongest language to describe it. You don't fully view it the way I do, but I don't think you fully disagree with me either. I do want to just give Trump a little bit of kudos, credits, encomiums. You can choose the word, and you can disagree with me as well. But since a couple of days before he took office, there has been a ceasefire, and to the surprise of some, it's actually so far held, although it's tenuous. Netanyahu is traveling to the U.S. I believe he's here now. This is from Al Jazeera. And according to Al Jazeera, and more particularly Haaretz, Netanyahu is going to do his best to get over on Trump, to get Trump to support more military action by Israel. So far, Trump is actually, I think you'll agree, or maybe you don't, been a little tougher on Bibi than we saw from Harris Biden, and that's a positive. Your thoughts?
I don't know if he's going to be, how Trump and Netanyahu are going to get along, but I think Trump and Netanyahu are very much alike too, and that scares me. I think the good news. It's good news right now. What's happening in Gaza? The fact that there's not a war going on, but there's not fighting. And, we hope that'll last as long as it possibly can. But, overall, it's a very volatile situation there, and we just have to wait and see what's happening. But the talk from Trump is about getting rid of all the, most of the people, if not all the people in Gaza, sending them to other countries, and they certainly don't want that. So I don't know how serious he is about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's floating a bunch of different ideas. We really, as you said, we don't know where we are right now, except we're not reading every single day. We're not seeing videos every single day of dozens, sometimes hundreds of Gazans being killed. And I think that is an enormous step forward from the abyss. So I give again Trump credit for that, and the fact that that's happened is a big reason why, frankly, I did not support Harris Biden, because they had failed repeatedly to stand up to Netanyahu. I don't think there's really even a lot of doubt about it. Now, the situation in, as I mentioned, and as you mentioned, in Gaza isn't as bad as it was. It's still very, very bad. And one of the really horrific aspects of the ceasefire, I guess, or at least the news that's coming out, is that and we knew this would happen too, Arlen, the death toll from the Israeli onslaught keeps growing. We have now, well, at least according to the Al Jazeera article I posted, 47,000 Palestinians, but Haaretz has bumped that number up to 62,000, so another 15,000. Maybe it wasn't Al Jazeera. I say that it was Al Jazeera, not Haaretz. That in the last, although their latest reporting in one article has 47, that number now has been upped to 62, and you can see there.
You know, I don't know if that matters a whole lot, Hal, as long as they're not fighting now and the deaths are not increasing. That may have been from before, and it's horrible. It's really an atrocity what Israel has done to Gaza, and then there's no excuse for it. But I think the fact that they've stopped fighting and they're not fighting each other is great news, and let's just hope it holds. I don't know if it will.
So given that, do you think that's an argument against Trump has orchestrated a fascist coup? The fact that he is not right now promoting war between Israel and Gaza, which is what many in his administration seem to want, what many certainly in Israel, the hardliners want. Apparently the electorate in Israel wants the ceasefire. They want the hostages home, and that's happening. But there's strong, powerful elements both in Israel and the United States that are opposed to the ceasefire. Does the fact that Trump certainly appears, by all accounts, to be pushing the ceasefire and for it to continue, does that take a little steam out of the argument that Trump is indeed a fascist who has orchestrated a coup to take over our government?
Well, I think he is a fascist, but I don't think he's, about to. He's not a war hawk. He doesn't really want to see a war anywhere, and I'll give him that much credit. He's pretty good about foreign policy on that aspect, but he's going to get a lot of countries angry at him right now, and they are angry at him. Canada, Mexico, so many other countries are upset with what he's doing economically, with his tariffs and everything. But the fact that they're not fighting in Israel and in Gaza and elsewhere, I think is definitely good news.
All right, we've got Arlen with us, and Arlen, I understand you have a old friend of mine, and I emphasize the word old. Is he in the studio with you, or is he just
sitting right next to me? And maybe if you want to talk, Fred, you could put your hand up or finger up or something, and we could do that. Or if you want him to talk now, Hal, we can let him talk now.
Well, I'm only concerned about crosstalk. I'm not sure how you're listening, because we get the problem sometimes when I don't have you low enough audio where we hear you twice through my mic and yours. That's because I don't like to wear the headphone anymore. You're not wearing one either. But right now the audio is real good. I've got it low enough. But yeah, Fred, if you want to jump in, I'd actually like to hear from Fred, because I know Fred totally, finds my, I guess, anti-democratic party position really despicable, right? I mean, Fred, you hate that. You basically have canceled me because I criticized the Democrats. Is that fair?
Fair. Absolutely.
All right. Well, there was a short and sweet from Fred. Fred, do you have anything bad to say about the Democratic Party or individual Democrats?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I go after everybody. You know that. I think giving Netanyahu those big bombs and stuff, destroying the people of Palestine and Gaza and stuff, that was terrible. And what Trump's doing is he's just keeping it going. And it's sad, because those people have been destroyed so bad, and it's still going on. They're not getting the food. They're being this is not going to last. The thing is going to get, Netanyahu is going to find a way to get it going again. And he should be headed to The Hague. That's my opinion.
Is there, I don't know whether Fred's in the camera, Arlen. I'd love to see him as he's speaking. Maybe yeah, I've got that wrong, or you guys can back it up, and here he comes. Maybe we can get them both guys on the screen at once. I see a lovely wardrobe. There's Fred with his, so is that, yes, look at that hat you've got on, Fred. Let me see if I can widen that that vision a little bit here. So at first I was like, wait, you can't possibly be wearing a MAGA hat, which you are not, but look at that. Look at you guys. Look at you two. That's pretty cool. I'm good to see you both together. Here we go. Let me fade you in. Look at that. Audience can see. So is that like, what is the animal you've got on your hat? I'm curious.
It's an orange pig, Hal.
Oh, it's a pig. I gotcha.
Yeah, it's a pig.
And, well, and is it defecating? Because that might make sense.
Well, it's what I think of Trump. He's an
No, I
orange
understand. I'm asking you if the pig itself is defecating on the hat. In the hat, or
pig. I hope not while I'm wearing it.
Okay. I was really going for the imagery, but do you think, Fred, and I know you, when you were young, and I'm not trying to out your age, but you guys got a couple of years on me. You considered volunteering or fighting in the war against the Vietnamese people, and you decided not to, right? You did not enlist in that war, correct?
No, I got my draft notice. I went up to the Oakland Induction Center twice. They found out that I had high blood pressure. They put me on hold after the first time for a year. I went back up. It was still up, and I didn't realize I had high blood pressure because I just got through playing football at MPC on a championship 10-0 or 10-1 season. And to me, I didn't know that, but they rejected me twice. So I did go up there, and when I found out that the Army wasn't going to take me unless the Russians were flying over, or if it was going to get worse, the war was going to get worse, they would have taken me. But they put me on hold for a while, and that's when I joined the police department.
So do you think, because I know in retrospect when we've discussed that war, you've been very, very horrified by what happened. Do you have, in retrospect, or now, do you think the American people don't fully grasp how awful war is and how much harm it does to people who are caught in its crosshairs?
Oh, absolutely. There's like the Trump's maggot party right now. They don't care about anything. They hate America. They hate the government. They hate everything, and they're all falling behind this this Hitler type person that wants to take over our country.
Yeah, let me add something here on that, Hal. I think the difference between the United States is that we have not had war on our soil. And if you go to Europe, they understand things better about how bad war can be. And, they're a lot more careful and worried. But, Americans just haven't had that experience. So, they don't see how horrible it can be.
Some American families, though, it's true. It's not like we've had our buildings bombed and all that, or missiles launched into our, into our cities. But there are areas in this country where there have been a significant number of people whose families have been impacted by war, by numerous deployments overseas, numerous tours of duty. And at least in 2016, the studies I saw suggested that Trump benefited from the fatigue, from battle fatigue in counties where there were high percentages of families who had soldiers. So, his pro-peace view, or at least his less bellicose attitude than some other candidates and presidents, seems to have helped him in some areas. Fred, let me ask you this. I know you're a former law enforcement officer and you still have close ties. You still are involved in security. At least I think you are. Why are you kind of an outlier? Why do you think law enforcement, all of whom I believe are government employees, they're represented by labor unions, they benefit from protections offered to employees. Why are so many of your compatriots or comrades in arms, if you will, Republicans?
That's a good question, Hal. And there's a lot of them that I worked with for probably for many, many years around here from different departments. And I see they're MAGA, they're Republicans. And I look at them and go, how can you watch the January 6th, those police officers being beat to hell? Some of them have died, and what they went through fighting for our country, and they're bringing in this terrible person as the president. Makes me sick.
And he's pardoning all of those rioters and all the people that attacked the cops. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I was wondering about if you had any insight into the law enforcement mind. I mean, I see this in my family. I have a nephew who's a deputy sheriff in Santa Clara County, and he is, I believe he's MAGA. I don't want to out him, but I'm pretty sure he's MAGA. He has a lot of the attitudes that are often ascribed to Trump voters. I would also note, Fred, one thing I've found especially surprising among law enforcement officers is they aren't more staunchly pro-gun control, pro-smart gun laws, because you guys are the ones who get shot at. Wouldn't you think you'd want there to be like 30-day background checks and no, repeating cartridges allowed and no assault weapons and all that? But it seems like that's not a priority for many law enforcement officers.
Well, it's because the schools are shot up. Not so much the cops are being shot, it's the kids in the schools are being shot. So I guess it doesn't affect them as much.
It's really interesting you say that, because that's something my son pointed out to me, that actually police officer is a dangerous job, but it's not the most dangerous job. There are not firefighters, certainly more dangerous, but there are many other jobs, not many. The folks who work in those slaughterhouses, that's an incredibly dangerous job where you're with those huge knives and saws that they use to cut up carcasses. No, it's incredible how many injuries there are, people losing limbs and things in those places. So, all right, we've got Fred, we've got Arlen. Should we talk politics? I know you guys are big on that. I want to see if I can get my slide deck back up here. And it's nice to have you both here. It's been so long, Fred. It's really good to see you. I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing all right.
Let's see if I can figure this out, because I got to get my tell and guest and slide. Here we go. All right, so here's what Haaretz says about. Just want to get this in there because we're talking about Netanyahu. You were talking about Netanyahu, Fred. According to Haaretz, Trump is actually a better negotiator. And they point out in that newspaper, which is not, they hate Bibi. That's an Israeli newspaper. But they say that he had it easy with Joe Biden. He didn't get how just utterly corrupt and ultimately evil Bibi is. Biden couldn't figure that out. Your buddy there, Arlen, seems to view Trump and Bibi as two peas in a pod coming out of the same can, if you will. Does that give Trump a leg up when it comes to negotiating with this slime ball?
Well, we're going to find out. If you remember, the hostage negotiations and all that came during last of Biden's thing, and Trump's taking credit for the hostages coming back, but it was Biden at the end of his things when it happened.
I'll tell you one thing, Hal. I think the Democrats were really did a terrible thing by not, going against Netanyahu and allowing and giving Israel all those bombs and all the support that they gave them. And I think it may have really hurt, Kamala when they had the election.
Doesn't Kamala deserve a lot of the blame too, though, for refusing to separate herself from Trump the whole time? I mean, not from Trump, from Biden, because she kept saying she wouldn't do anything differently. She couldn't think of anything she would do differently. It was a terrible,
mistake, I think. And I think
unforced error.
The results obviously indicated it's a mistake, and I think it was a mistake.
Don't you think it would be hard for a vice president to go against the president while they're in office?
She could just tell Biden afterwards, she could say, oh, no, I didn't say that. And he wouldn't even remember what she had said. So it wouldn't even be a problem. Okay. Didn't you hear me say all those great things about you? And he'd be like, oh, yeah, thanks. I don't know. I actually don't, Fred. I think you're trying to be all putting all flippancy aside. You want to be president, man. You have to do what you have to do to win. And I think that includes separating yourself from the previous president. I remember when Hillary ran in 2016, she separated herself from Obama. She said that she had thought he was wrong to pursue peace negotiations with Iran. She was totally wrong. He was completely right there, but she did say that. She said, yeah, I didn't think we should be negotiating with Iran. So she tried to throw him under the bus there. So we've seen this before. We've seen that game before.
I think Kamala was kind of surprised by being put in the spot she was in. She only had 3 months, and she made a big mistake by trying to, keep herself close to Trump. I mean, to Biden, and to take credit for whatever he has done. But yeah, she should have separated herself from him a lot more.
All right, let me ask you guys this. I've got this article from Tom Hartman, but I don't really want to share it right now since I both of you are on the screen here. He talks about a 60-plus year war on democracy. And you guys, as I said, have a couple more. I want to belabor that you guys are a lot older than I am, that you're closer to the end, that you're broken down, and I'm not. I don't really want to make that point. But nevertheless, it is relevant. Do you remember, both of you, the 60s and what Hartman is talking about, that there was this sort of undercurrent of dissatisfaction in the GOP, and they were looking to repeal at that point the benefits of the New Deal, the pro-worker, pro-consumer legislation that had been passed by Democrats. And you're nodding first, Arlen, so you go first.
Yeah, I've written about this a lot, and there's no question about it that starting in the 1970s, the GOP discovered that they had a lot of money and they had a lot of power, and they put it toward making their party more important and powerful and liked. So they put money into like the Heritage Foundation and all these think tanks, and into talk radio and all the media outlets, Fox News, Murdoch, all that. They've been working on this for years now, and now it's come to fruition. And Donald Trump is ready to put in place this the 2025 project, and the Republicans have been pushing for this. They've been kind of changing the court in their favor, and they're in a good spot. They're in a spot they want to be. I don't know if it's a good spot or not yet.
Anything you want to add to that, Fred?
Yeah, I've considered the Republicans for many years. They're like termites. They work day and night to get what they want. And they've done a really good job of taking over so many different areas that's where now we're going to pay the price for it.
Don't you think, though, that narrative, and I'm not going to argue with it, kind of ignores the role the Democrats have played? I know neither of you are defending them. I understand. But if the focus is so exclusively on the Republican Party, like I said, I'm not going to show the clips. I have them. But I had a clip there from going all the way back to the 60s, the 1968 Democratic Convention, where Abe Ribicoff denounces Gestapo tactics in the streets of Chicago. That's a Democratic city. That's a Democratic mayor, Richard Daley. So we see it then. We see it today with the Democratic Convention, where the Palestinian voices aren't even allowed to be heard. So isn't this really a bipartisan effort that we've been seeing to empower and enrich the powerful and wealthy? For almost pretty much, not my entire lifetime. I was born in 1963, but I would say at least since the 70s. And you go ahead, Arlen.
Yeah, I think the difference between the Democrats and Republicans are that the Democrats, they have billionaires in their midst, but Republicans have more, and the Republicans want more tax cuts for the rich, and they've shown that, and they don't care if there's inequality in income in this country. It doesn't seem to matter to them. I think the Democrats care a little bit more, but they don't have the power to do anything. They don't feel they have the power to do anything, or they don't have the desire to do anything as much as the Republicans. So I think they're pushing much harder and, trying to get their brand to take over the country.
All right. So Fred, let me rephrase it for you. As a football player, as a guy who has acknowledged to me personally, and I'm going to out you here, you like to get down in the mud on the field and just knock guys over on their butts. Doesn't that irritate you that your party is weak-willed, soft, doesn't put it to the other side? Does that make you think, what am I doing supporting these people?
No, I always support the little guy. I always back the little guy. I don't like bullies. Now that I've become one against the maggots on Trump's side, I am a bully towards them anytime I can be. It's weak. Merrick Garland was such a weak person. He should have had Trump in jail a long time ago. The thing is they're very weak, and I get disgusted with it too. But they're much more honorable than the Republicans. That's my point of view. I got a question for you, Hal. You had a liberal, so-called liberal station here in Monterey for 9 years, correct? How come you're so against the liberals?
Well, let me say, first of all, because I wanted you to complete your question, I didn't want to cut you off. We didn't call it liberal. Sometimes we did. I would sometimes embrace the term liberal, but we generally were progressive talk. So not exactly liberal, but just to use a parse. I really have become more disenchanted with the liberal movement since I started KRXA 540 in 2005, 20 years ago now. Amazing, isn't it? I remember seeing you, Fred, driving your vehicle up and down Broadway and Seaside with you're the first KRXA bumper sticker I ever saw in a car was in your car, and that's how we met. I was pretty impressed. I was pretty psyched, actually, to see that. I think that was before you even met Arlen. I'm responsible for putting you guys together, so I feel good about that. Yeah, I thought at that time I was definitely more pro-democratic party than I am now, and I became disenchanted over time. I'll give you a couple of answers because you asked me the question. One, I do think the Democratic Party has gotten worse. I really do. I think that the policies that it has tended to embrace have gotten more pro-billionaire, more anti-worker, more anti-peace. I'll tell you what. Barack Obama was an incredible disappointment to me. When he was first elected, I wrote a piece saying that the day that night when he was declared winner, and he won by a landslide, was one of the happiest days of my life. I really felt like we had turned a corner and we were going to be, repudiating the torture of the W, because W was a torturer. People say try to rehabilitate him. Torturer Dick was his vice president. I really was optimistic that we might repudiate. And Obama had campaigned to the left, had said, he didn't believe in all the trade deals. He wanted everyone to have health care. And he didn't deliver. Some of it was because of holding, the Republicans held him back. But a lot of it was he didn't go nearly as far, didn't push as hard as he could have, and on other occasions took the side of the billionaire class. So that was a big eye-opener for me, Fred. Hillary Clinton, I really found objectionable, even as early as 2008 when she ran for president against Obama. I was so glad she lost to him. Then she was anointed in 2016 over Bernie. So it's been a long and that's a long enough answer to give you, but I hope that gave you a flavor for why.
He was my favorite president, still is.
Obama?
Obama.
Okay.
Now, let me say this much. Your disillusionment with the Democrats and with liberals and all that is unfortunately all across the country, and that's one reason that Trump won. There's a lot of people disillusioned with the Democratic Party, and for good reason. So, you're certainly not in a minority on that necessarily. But, but again, I'll get back to what I always talk about, how it's the system. It's the political system we're under where money is everything. And that is why the Republicans are doing so well and why there's so many Republicans around, because they have media sources, the Fox News, that support the things that, the MAGAs talk about. So,
I just think that's just not true, Arlen. I mean, I think that's a gross overstatement. The newspapers, by and large, supported Biden, I think by a very significant majority. The most powerful and influential newspapers in the country, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Washington Post didn't endorse anyone, but it was clear from their coverage that they much preferred Biden. The CNN, MSNBC, two of the three news cable channels endorsed clearly. I mean, there was not even a doubt. Every program they did was devoted to attacking Trump. And I just don't see that in terms of what's on, like, YouTubers and live streamers like me. Anyone can do that. If some of the more popular YouTube programs are Republican based, that's the public voting. That's not powerful billionaires building a network that only they can control. So I just don't think that's a very persuasive explanation.
Well, the thing is that these kind of radio stations and MAGA news sources were not around like 20 years ago. They've come on strong. There's been a lot of money put into them. They like to stir people up, and they make money off of being hateful and promoting MAGA views. So, and as far as newspapers go, let's not forget that the Washington Post and the LA Times were too afraid to endorse Kamala.
Well, they didn't endorse, but their coverage was clearly slanted in favor of Harris. And I think your point about new radio stations was totally accurate when I started KRXA. That's why I started it, because at that point, legacy media was dominated. Certainly, TV and radio was clearly dominated by Republicans and to some degree corporate Democrats, which they still have tremendous power. But that's just it's a very different media landscape today than it was when Limbaugh was on. Limbaugh's dead. And Fox News isn't nearly the influencer it was. Hannity's puffy and old looking. He doesn't have nearly the kind of power he once did. O'Reilly's off the air. Glenn Beck, though he's a nothing burger. What about that guy who was he's gone bankrupt? The nut job who people used to who went after the shooters, the families, the parents,
that's Alex Jones, right?
Alex Jones, right?
Yeah, but ultimately, Hal, the main thing, the more important thing of anything is that it's the money. It's the fact that people could give as much money as they want. That Elon Musk could give $290 million, while the Democrats are asking their folks to give 25. That tells you a lot. The Supreme Court has given the rich people the right to spend as much money as they want, and often not even to disclose where they get it from.
Well, we agree there, and my answer to that is they bought up both parties. It's not just the Republicans that are bought and paid for by the billionaire class. It's also the Democrats. That would be my response.
Democrats don't have a choice. What are they going to do? I mean, if they allow the Republicans to get all the billionaires, then they have no chance at all. So
well, my answer is that's why we embrace the Green Party. But even to the extent that you're right, the Democrats can't unilaterally disarm, and I find that a somewhat self-serving argument. The Democrats could have embraced Bernie in 2016. Who did not take billionaire money. They could have embraced Bernie in 2020, who did not take billionaire money. And they could have said no to AIPAC and said, we're going to stand with our guys and not let AIPAC, primary more progressive members of Congress. And they didn't do any of that.
Yeah, but let's not forget, Hal, that somebody like Bernie is not going to be in favor by those who are running the Democratic Party. The average Democrat might have wanted him, but unfortunately, both parties are run by a certain class of people, a certain powerful bunch of people with a lot of money, and they decide who's going to be actually running for president. And I think
whose fault is that? Every Democrat voted for Hakeem Jeffries to be this House leader, their House leader. Every Democrat in the Senate voted for Chuck Schumer. So if you're going to say, well, the problem is the House leadership, that's hardly a good excuse for the left of the party, because they voted for those leaders. In contrast, in the Republican Party, you have the Freedom Caucus or whatever they call themselves. They don't vote for what those Republicans that they don't view as sufficiently populist or or right wing or whatever you want to call it. They actually is a bigger tent. There's more voices that are heard in the Republican tent than in the Democratic at this point.
Well, you notice too that Republicans are in lockstep. Every single one of them, with maybe one or two exceptions, are MAGA. They're going to do whatever Trump wants them to do, and so they're pretty much a single. They're totally controlled by Trump. And the Democrats, at least, are trying to figure out what to do, and they haven't figured out the proper thing to do. And like I said, I think it's the ones who have the clout in the Democratic Party are the ones that didn't want Bernie, even if the people wanted him.
240-242-5646 if you want to join Arlen, Fred, and me. We'd love to talk to you. We've got about 25 more minutes to go. 240-242-5646. Fred, do you have anything else you want to throw on the fire, or I'm going to start showing some of the stories that Arlen actually did want to talk about? But I guess what I'll ask you, instead of leaving it an open-ended question, you're like me, you're arguer. You get into it with people you disagree with. Have you found any arguments that seem to make people who don't share your pro-democratic worldview pause and think, gee, maybe you've got a point?
They don't get the point, but I argue every day with the Republicans or MAGA or the maggots or whatever you want to call them. I argue every day. And I got to tell you a quick story. One of these young guys that worked for me years ago and all that stuff, I thought he had some brains and some common sense. He doesn't. He's MAGA. And he told me one day, he says, gee, Fred, he says, you liberals don't have, many of the liberals don't have any guns. We have all the guns. I said, you don't have them all. And he goes, well, yeah, but this. I said, yeah, I hear about how you guys want to start a revolution and all that. I said, well, let me know when you're going to start it, because I want to be sure I'm involved. And he drew me a map of his cul-de-sac of all the Trump people, where they lived and all that stuff, bragging about the Trump people. I said, you're making it real easy for me. Many targets on your street, buddy.
Well, I think this is what's really scary, is that there is so anger on both sides, and I understand it, and it's very worrisome.
It should be, because you know what? There's so many people, ladies especially, that are so scared right now. I talked to a lady stopped at my house the other day, and she liked my anti-Trump signs I put up on my street and everything. She thanked me for that, and she's scared to death. She's scared, and she's not the only lady that's talked to me, older lady, scared to death of what's going to happen. I said, just stay strong, and we'll see what happens, but don't give up.
Well, what are they afraid of? I mean, to be like, and I'm not saying there aren't reasons, because there are lots of things I've been afraid of, but I don't necessarily fear just Republican rule. There's plenty of things that the Democrats have done. I mean, my biggest fear has been genocide in Gaza, but also the climate catastrophe. And I don't think either party. So I get that fear. I just think it shouldn't be confined to worries about what Trump might do. That's sort of my point.
Well, I disagree with you on that too. And I'm glad your Green Party didn't come in and do a lot of damage to the voting. Probably didn't do too much at all, from what I can see.
Didn't really matter either, because Trump won.
Yeah, Trump won. Your party lost, my party lost.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't vote, to be fair to me, I didn't vote for Biden, although I am still a Democrat, so there it is. I didn't vote for Trump either, though, so you can't get on me for voting for Trump. I didn't. I voted for Jill Stein. And before you try to make excuses and say, well, you're in Maryland, it's a blue state, I told Arlen I would have been perfectly happy to vote for Jill Stein in Michigan or Pennsylvania. It wouldn't have mattered. Didn't matter.
We're glad you're not here anymore, Al.
All right, guys. Here's a video. Tell me if this is something that makes you feel more comfortable about what you characterize as your party. This is from the candidate forum, and this is the guy who is your new DNC chair.
In this country, we will not take money from people that do not share our values as a Democratic Party.
Chair Martin, in 30 seconds, who are the kind of folks that you're talking about? Because it sounds really good, but specifically, who are there types of folks that you will bar from giving money to the Democratic Party?
Well, there's lots of billionaires I wouldn't take money from. Elon Musk is one of them, right? There's a lot of tech, this tech industrial complex that President Biden was talking about, and others. There are a lot of donors there who are clearly working against the interest of working working class people that I would not take money from. There's too many to name. That's the problem in this country right now, right? The top 1% in this country who control so much of the wealth, right? Who are lording over this country right now, we shouldn't be taking their money. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of good billionaires out there that have been with Democrats who share our values, and we will take their money, but we're not taking money from those bad billionaires.
So basically, a good billionaire is somebody who supports the Democratic Party. Is that? I mean, do you guys find that, honestly, do you find that to be comforting or something that makes you think, oh, yeah, the party's on the right track?
I like that guy. I hadn't seen that before, but what he's saying is so true. And exactly, that's exactly what the Democrats ought to be like. They should not take money from, the billionaires that are bad, like, Musk. And all that.
Musk wouldn't give him money. He's a bad billionaire because he wouldn't give the Democrats money, not because of any specific thing he has done or hasn't done. They take money from military billionaires who are military contractors. They take tons of money from the oil and gas industry. He says he wouldn't, but Democratic candidates have all the time, as a matter of fact.
That's what I'm talking about, Hal. It's our system. Money is everything. Democrats want to win, so they have to get donations. So they get donations from the wrong people, from the military-industrial complex and so on, and the oil companies or whatever, the pharmaceuticals. And that's the problem with this country. And I think the solution might be to have public financing of elections, so you take money out of voting.
So and Fred, you have no problem either with what Ken Martin said, do you? Or maybe you do.
I don't know him that well yet, but I'm kind of curious about how much money you sent to the Green Party, because you're a rich guy.
I give him a little bit. I don't give him a lot. I give him a little bit. And I'm pretty much focused on this live stream, which unsurprisingly makes me no money at all. If anything, it's a bit of a drain, although not like the radio station sadly was. That was my biggest regret. Guys, that's my biggest regret. I loved, that was the best job I ever had, and I wish it had been sustainable because there was just a lot of real positives. Okay, to be fair to Ken Martin, I always try to be fair, I really do. Here he elucidates that answer he gave, which he was pretty clear on, but I think he gives a more complete answer. So I think to be fair, it's not a terrible answer, even though I'm critical of it. Here we go.
Martin, you said that there are a lot of good billionaires out there who have been with Democrats, who share our values, and we will take their money. But we're not taking money from those bad billionaires. What is a good billionaire and what is a bad billionaire in your view?
I'm going to say this because I think it's really important, right? Many of us on this stage want to end Citizens United. We want a complete overhaul in our campaign finance system. We want to get dark money out of politics, right? And for me and for many folks here, as we raise money, we only raise money from people who share our values. I will make this commitment to everyone. I will work my ass off to make sure we push to get the corrosive impact of money out of politics. We've got to change this. We raised and spent over $10 billion just last year in 2024 on elections on the Democratic side. And the presidential race, $2.5 billion. It's obscene. We've got to reverse course. We also have to win elections, not at any expense. We got to get dark money out of politics. We got to end Citizens United. We need a complete overhaul of our campaign finances. And my commitment is we will not take money from corporations that are union busting. We will not take money from corporations that are polluting our planet. We will only take money from people who share our values. That's a DNC that I'm going to lead.
I like that guy.
I don't believe it.
He's talking to me.
See, I'm with Fred. I don't believe it. I will say this. It sounds good. But I think once that money infects and infests the process, as you said, Arlen, yourself, I don't know how you get it out. And I just don't think you can really, there's any really good way to distinguish between good and bad billionaires. I'll just throw this out and then I have a couple questions more, but you guys can respond. I think actually the party should take money from anyone who'll give it to. If Elon Musk wants to give me $1 billion, I'll take it. But it should only do so with the understanding that these are our values. These are the policies we're going to pursue, which are clean green energy, which are Medicare for all, which are pro-peace. And you don't get to change that. Those are our values, and on those we stand hard and fast. That's the position I really would like to see the party take.
Yeah, that sounds good to me, Hal. And I liked what the guy said, but I know he may not may not be able to do what he's saying he wants to do. So we don't know yet, and it's probably a long shot. But I hope he really, gets down to business and does the things he talks about.
And Fred, I know you agree with me, but if you want to add to what I just said, not usually, but you didn't have a problem with what I just said, I believe.
Very rarely we agree, Al. That's for sure.
So we're three, I'm going to throw myself in under the bus and say we're three old white guys. Anyone who looks at this screen can see that. The Democratic Party receives some criticism because all of the top candidates for the position and the one who won, you just saw him, Ken Martin, is a white man. Now, the previous chair was Jamie Harrison. The chair before him was Tom Perez. And the chair before him was, I believe, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So here's my question. Should the Democratic Party have continued to pursue somebody who's not and I don't like the term, but I'll throw it out here, stale, pale male, or have they done enough diversifying and now it's time to go back to the old white guys? Fred, let's ask you. You're an old white guy. What do you anything on that at all?
We need a young, tough white guy, not an old one like the three of us. I'm glad you include yourself in that.
And you liked Martin enough. You thought he was pretty good from what you saw.
I haven't heard enough of him yet.
You don't trust him. I don't trust him. I trust him as far as I can throw Arlen. Which is farther than I can throw you, Fred. That's farther than I can throw you, but not much.
Well, Hal, the problem with what you're talking about is you're making a point that he's white and the previous people were black or whatever, and there's been obviously a change of heart in that area, and Trump is pushing real hard to get rid of that kind of thing where you think about race and gender and things like that. So I think the Democrats maybe overdid it, and they need to get not emphasize that so much about how many whites, how many blacks, how many Latinos.
Hal, I got one thing I'd like to say since you brought it up, the race. I think Kamala lost a lot of voters because she's a female and she's black. And I think there's so much racism, and I know it personally because I know these people, that the young people especially, I've questioned them on it. I said, you didn't vote because you're a racist. Oh, no, I'm not a racist. Yeah, right. Well, I know him personally, okay? And also, I said, you most of you Republicans or beggars or whatever, you've had women problems. I'm sorry.
Throw that phone away.
Is some woman there going after Fred? I want to respond to that because I want him on the street. There's a couple of problems I have with that argument. One, how do you explain Barack Obama? He got more votes. He's won by the biggest margin of anybody in recent times. How do you explain that, Fred? A man with the name Obama who's black manages to win the White House twice and get over 50% of the vote both times. If voters are racist and vote against Kamala for that reason, I think that you run smack up against that fact. But also, and I'll throw this out there on top of it, even assuming there's truth to that, didn't Kamala make it really hard for you to provide a good argument to say, okay, well, I get it. Maybe you are a little more comfortable with Trump, but here are the arguments for her and why she would be better for you personally.
First of all, back on Obama, we just went through with your Bush guy. Terrible, terrible Republican, terrible. And so I think people are looking for a change. That's why he got in, and it was such a heavy vote for him because of Bush.
And I think there was a strong reaction after Obama was elected. There's a lot of racism started to seep out. And, by the time he was finished, there was a lot of people who didn't like the idea of a black person being in charge.
Yeah, I'm just not. There's plenty of other explanations, I think, that make more sense. I'm not saying there aren't some people who didn't vote for Harris because she's a Blasian and she's a woman, but then there are probably plenty of people who vote for her because she is a Black Asian woman. Maybe they're more on the other side, but there was definitely an effort, and certainly by Obama, right, to rally people to vote for her because she's a woman. You brothers aren't feeling it, is what he said.
Well, you got to look too. Trump is a hardcore racist, hardcore. And when he came in for the first time, he brought racism to the surface. And a lot of people started looking at racism and listened to his stuff. And I think that's what changed a whole lot. He's a very hardcore racist.
As is Elon Musk.
Yes. Hi Hitler. Yeah. Hi Hitler. Yeah.
All right. I maybe I don't see something that's right in front of my face. I hear from people, I hear from Arlen about all the anti-Semitism out there. I'm Jewish. I don't see it. I don't buy it. I think it's an excuse. I think Jews use the claim of anti-Semitism, they weaponize it to justify doing awful things or to change the subject when crimes by Jews are pointed out. I think that the argument that people didn't vote for Kamala because she's a Black woman or whatever she is, a mixed race woman, I think is a cop-out. I think it's a way to avoid her obvious shortcomings as a candidate.
Well, I'll tell you, Hal, I think you're wrong about the anti-Semitism because the numbers are not on your side. The statistics are saying that there is a lot of increase of violence and anti-Semitism in this country.
Well, those statistics come from the ADL, which has been determined to be totally unreliable, and that they often conflate criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. And yes, there has been more criticism of Israel because Israel has been committing a genocide.
And I'll tell you one other thing that I think is important. Women have been set back a lot by Hillary losing, by Kamala losing. I don't know if the Democrats would be able to nominate a woman today. I think, it'd be really
well, they should nominate a good woman. Then they should nominate someone who's not a warmonger.
Yeah, I'd like that, but I don't know if the whole country would.
Well, should people have voted then? So you're saying there should have been affirmative action. We should have voted for Hillary or Harris, not because they're good candidates, not because they have good policies, not because they're qualified, but because if we don't vote for them, then we'll be setting back the cause of women. Is that the argument?
No, that's the total opposite. It shouldn't matter whether they're a man or a woman. What really matters is, their policies, what they believe in. But I think a lot of people will think, oh, well, Democrats have lost with women, so we better not nominate anymore. So that's what I'm worried about.
You got a question for you, Hal. Do you have anybody else call your podcast here, or is it just this old
It's
guy?
rare, but it happens. I used to have some, but not a lot of calls, Fred. Need you to get on the blower when I'm doing these shows and call in.
I don't know if I could do that, Hal.
It's pretty frustrating, too, because I'm one of the few out there who actually take calls. It's hard to... my views are so iconoclastic. People get really irritated. If you like Trump, I have a lot of critical things to say about Trump. And if you like the Democrats, you obviously aren't going to like what I do. So it's hard because I don't have that core of supportors. I don't know what to tell you.
Benedict Arnold type?
I think that's how I'm perceived, yes. I think that's fair because I'm arrogant and pompous enough. You have to be to do this crap, to think I do a good show that's entertaining and informative, but amusing on occasion. But if you can't build, but you have to have a core group of listeners. But we have seen the one thing I'll say is we have seen the slowly inching up the subscription numbers.
3, 4. What do you got?
275 now.
You got Arlen. So how many more you got?
Well, we're at 275 now, Fred.
Well, they should be calling in, Al.
Yeah, it's disappointing. What can I tell you? Well, that's the number of subscribers, not the number of viewers. Okay. But it's tough to get calls sometimes. What can I tell you? I know. I you know what? I sometimes think maybe I should just stop because what's the point of doing this is to get an audience and to make a difference. And if people aren't watching and listening, I'm not making a difference. So it's a fair point.
I think your problem is, like you say, your views are a lot different than most people, and you're not going to get a lot of supporters who agree with you on everything, so I think that is a problem, but, certainly you do a good job as far as, bringing up these topics and talking about them and getting this on the air. But yeah, I'd like to see more numbers too. It's
tough. It's tough. So we've got a couple more minutes left. I appreciate Fred joining us. Arlen, it's always fun. I hope you don't mind. He's taking some of the wind out of your sails.
No, I'm
a little less Arlen time, more Fred time. So let me get to this. Arlen, you're really worried about a coup. So this was an article you shared with me. Let me see if I can get this up here and show to people. It's tough because I got Fred here, so he kind of messed everything up in terms of my the way I set everything up, because now I got 3 people instead of 2. But no, I want you to stay. So I'll just do this the whole screen. So Arlen, did you find this article? You shared it with me by Deborah Pearlstein. Did you find this comforting? The law is not fully Trump's yet. You said, how are we going to stop the Trump coup? She seems to think that, the courts can be a tool, can be used against Trump. But you feel like she's a little too maybe optimistic. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a problem. She might be overly optimistic, but at least she's, giving us an idea that there's something that can be done, and it should be done if people will follow the law. But let me give you an idea of what she said. She said the difference this time is not only the enormity of Trump's claims, a level of authoritarian aspiration that far exceeds any other in the modern American age. It's also that the administration's hardly even bothers to try to come up with legal justifications for its actions. And that's true. They're totally ignoring the law and the Constitution.
Yeah, I actually did highlight that section, that paragraph, and I meant to get it up when you started speaking, but it took me a moment to get there. But folks can read it as well. I think that's accurate, by the way. I'm critical of Trump, as you know, or I'm not as critical of Trump, as you know, as you guys are. But I think this is an accurate claim by Professor Pearlstein here. They don't bother to justify it. And a perfect example of that was where they fired those inspector generals. He fired 15 inspector generals, including at Labor, I believe, at State Department, at there was one that was very troubling to me. I can't remember now where I heard the guy speaking, and the inspector general was fired. And he made the point that legally, Trump has to wait 30 days. He has to give Congress 30 days notice before he fires any inspector general, and he has to provide justification for the termination. And in this case, he didn't do any of that. He just sent them emails on Friday night saying, don't bother, coming into work on Monday.
Well, it's obvious that the Trump administration wants to just plain ignore laws, ignore the Constitution, and they think they're going to be able to get away with it. And maybe they will. We'll have to wait and find out.
Well, Pearlstein says they won't. Pearlstein makes the point that, that Trump was reversed more than any other president in his first term, that the courts have actually stood up to him. Even Republican judges and justices have stood up to him more than the Democrats have. And a perfect example she gave is how a Reagan judge, by the way, the judge who said no, I don't know which amendment it is, but if you're born in the United States, I think it's the 14th Amendment. You're born in the United States, you're a citizen, period, end of story. You can't, it's not like you get to say, oh, well, if the parents are here illegally, you're not a citizen. And that was a Reagan judge who said, this is a laughable argument. Get out of my courtroom. It's stopped. You cannot do that. You cannot deny citizenship to the child of people who are in this country, whether they're legally or illegally, they're citizen, period, end of story. And that was a Republican Reagan appointee.
Well, I think she showed us that there are things that can be done, but I don't get the picture that she's really that strong, that confident that these things, pro-law things will actually come about, because obviously the Trump administration has no use for the law, the Constitution, the rules. They're willing to just take over and be authoritarian.
Yeah, but she's point. I hear you. I don't think it's a totally unreasonable fear. I think it's legitimate. I get it. But I also think maybe we'll say it this way. I think Pearlstein offers you a little more reason for some optimism, or at least not to be so worried, Arlen, as you seem to be. I would posit it that way.
Yeah, but you could tell from her article and what she says that she's not all that sure that her way is going to work or it's going to happen. Whether the Supreme Court or the Congress will do anything to make things legal again. So, she's given us the answer, but I don't know that she's confident that it's going to happen.
Well, the courts are not perfect bulwarks, and they never have been. A perfect example is, as I understand, the court did not order George W. Bush and Torture Dick to stop torturing people. They didn't say extraordinary rendition is illegal. So that's a terrible thing that the courts did. The courts did not stop Barack Obama's drone program, which was clearly illegal. So you're right. I mean, they're far from ideal. They're far from perfect, but we've seen them on occasion, and certainly when it comes to Trump, who's not well liked in the Washington establishment, who's viewed with great suspicion, unlike Obama and unlike W, they have been somewhat intrepid when it comes to stopping Trump.
On all the important matters, the Supreme Court did a great job, but you have to go back 20, 30 years to see that. Right now, they're ultra-conservative. Their favorability ratings are the lowest they've ever been, and justifiably.
Do you think then that the ultimate solution has to be a revitalized, popular Democratic Party that is able to galvanize public opinion against the worst excesses of the Republican Party, and specifically Trump?
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Like I said, I like what the leader was saying. And, if Trump keeps going to the excesses that he's been going to, there may be a reaction in our direction.
Well, shouldn't, though, the Democratic Party, instead of worrying about how bad Trump is, worry about uniting people in support of the policies that it has not, in fact, that the Democrats haven't supported, that the Democrats have repeatedly failed to get behind, including peace, including Medicare for all, including bringing good jobs back to this country?
Absolutely. Fred, do you want to say anything more?
Yeah, I was wondering about the Green Party. I don't hear anything from them anymore. So very little during that time. But I think the Supreme Court, the 6 megas on there, have ruined it. And thus 3 older guys are not going to see the improvement in our lifetime. It's a done deal. America has gone. It's now a mega world, and we're not going to see the change in our time.
You're right about the Green Party. I've been disappointed, Fred. I would like to have heard some statements, but it's very tough. I mean, they have no money. They have very little reach. That's why I try to speak for them and push them in front of people, but I have very limited reach too. That's why I try to call for us all to unite in favor of a truly pro-people, pro-life, pro-environment, pro-peace party, and that would be the Green Party. But again, they're tiny, and they just don't have the critical mass that we need for them to. But if you're talking about people you don't hear from, I don't think I've heard about 2 words from Kamala since the election. That must have been a bit of a disappointment for you.
Well, she was probably devastated. I mean, and she probably doesn't feel that she did such a bad job. She probably doesn't feel she has a right to say anything.
Anything you want to throw on top of that one, Fred?
You get that, Flea?
Yeah, it's been awful. I got little bugs. Yeah, it's terrible here. My answer to that is, Arlen, yeah, she did a bad job. So apologize. Come forward and say, yeah, instead of bragging, oh, I'm so proud of all the money we raised. That's the one thing she did say. She said, oh, we raised $1 billion. You all should be so proud of yourselves. No, what she should have said is, I did the wrong thing. Instead of campaigning for workers, instead of campaigning for peace, I went around with Torturer Dick's daughter. That's what she should have said.
Well, I don't think it really matters what Kamala Harris has to say now
No.
because she's out of the picture. But I'll say it again.
She's not out of the picture. She's talking about running for governor or in California.
That's president. I'll say that much. But I'll say it again over and over. It's the political system, Hal. It's because we only have two parties, and they're all controlled by money, and that's why the Green Party is going to be in trouble.
Well, then join with me to build a third party to bring people together into an emerging alternative. If you, and I agree with you, of course, you agree with me that the problem is two billionaire-backed parties that are two sides of the same tarnished coin, then shouldn't we together be building an alternative?
I'd like to see that, but until the political system changes, I don't see how it's going to be possible.
Well, how can it change if we don't do this?
Well, we have to definitely work on doing it. And, the Democrats are going to have to do a lot of the things that their new leader says. And, maybe that'll change things. I hope so.
All right. All right, Fred, that's going to do it for me. And Arlen, you get the last word or words.
It's been a splash.
All right, that's Fred and Arlen. We'll have Arlen back next week. Fred's always welcome as well, of course. And I'll be back tomorrow. Actually, joined by Adnan Stumo. He is one of my comrades in Code Pink, and we're going to be talking about Tulsi Gabbard. I endorsed Tulsi for, Director of National Intelligence on Friday. We'll hear whether Adnan agrees with that tomorrow.
God help you.